Hey, very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. My name is Sean.
I'm Alex.
And this is Sven.
This is Sven.
And we are back with another episode of Season 3 Coaster Kings Radio. For those who are wondering where we've been at work.
We've been
so
working.
we were a little bit, delayed for a couple weeks getting these episodes out.
Yep.
Busy life. And honestly, with travel restrictions still kind of locking us all up in our native countries or wherever we're located, we can't really travel a whole lot right now. So we're just kind of hanging out at our home parks, but there hasn't been too many exciting things to necessarily record podcasts about until today. Because today we rode VelociCoaster at Universal Orlando Resort's Islands of Adventure. It was amazing.
Intamin.
Yeah. Little spoiler. I mean, this is going to be spoiler full.
Oh, yeah.
Just like a heads up.
Yeah.
So, if you're not ready to be told what's going on. At this point, it's hard to escape. I feel like my Facebook feed is VelociCoaster, VelociCoaster, VelociCoaster.
Yeah. You already know what happens in the queue because everyone's posting
about the
pictures of the queue and
But yeah, we'll dive into that
and whatnot.
Before we do that, we're going to do a quick dive into what we have on the website currently. We restarted a throwback series, which kind of goes over trips that
4 months later, our second installment in the throwback series.
It's seriously been a year. But so we have a new new article live about Liu Vu Village that Alex went to in Taiwan back in 2015. So that's something you definitely want to check out. And then our how-to series continue with a new installment where we talk about U.S. regional parks, what to do, what to bring, how to plan. May you do like a coaster road trip through the U.S., especially for people that are used to being able to access parks by public transit in other countries around the world. That is by far definitely not an option in the U.S. So one spoiled tip.
Yeah.
And so I think how we'll do it today is we have Sven here. Obviously, Sven's in Belgium, and he's locked up in his country right now because of COVID. So he didn't ride VelociCoaster with us. So what we're going to do...
We have next week... He's going to ride
Conda.
Yay!
The other big Intamin.
So we're going to trade off. We're going to take turns. Sven's going to interview us on our VelociCoaster experience. And then our next podcast, we will be interviewing Sven on his Conda experience.
I am so curious because I feel like the rides look nothing alike. Obviously they're instruments and the track style, the trains, but they are just different kinds of products. And we realized that today too. Is like VelociCoaster, it's just a completely different breed of Sky
Isn't
Rush
that their marketing,
or
a different breed of coaster?
That's probably what they call it.
The apex predator of roller
coasters.
coasters.
Wow, universal marketing.
Yes, instilled. But yeah, we can we just dive right in. The experience started with
long story short, panic attack came first.
Yeah.
So first of all, a couple days ago on the pass holder pages, there was a fake email, incorrect email sent out with a RSVP
they prematurely
option
launched
for
an RSVP
previews.
email. Yeah,
and I saw that, and I was about to walk into work, so I was like, I have this sneaky suspicion that the moment that it actually becomes official, I'm not available to go make any reservations because it's always busy. So I sent Alex all my information. I was like, just in case you get an email about signing up for pass holder previews, here's all my pass holder information.
I got lucky because I was on a break and was literally scrolling through Facebook when I saw on the Universal Orlando pass holder official Facebook page that they had dropped the link for registration. A lot of people were like, I never got an email. They said they sent emails. We never got emails either.
And I get emails
literally followed
a
link as it was posted on the Facebook page, and I went in and I had Sean's pass information and my information and got us RSVP'd for Tuesday, May the 4th.
Be with you.
Star Wars Day.
Yep.
We actually tried getting Hollywood Studios reservation for today, but that wasn't happening.
Yeah.
Somehow I'm not surprised. I don't know if I put two and two together when we were trying to make a reservation for today, but now it kind of makes sense.
So how did it work? You had a reservation on your phone or something, and you had to go to the entrance of the ride?
Yeah, they emailed us a confirmation with our names, a QR code,
our time slots, our pass type, and then an attached confirmation page, PDF with
a PDF with a unique QR code. And we didn't want to tempt fate with this. We almost didn't get to go because I was stuck halfway across the country
in El Paso, Texas.
Oh, wow. Yesterday, my flight was delayed over 5 hours.
Yeah, I was like, talk about that panic attack. It wasn't
We were,
necessarily
like-
making a reservation. It was last night when I realized that we may not be able to go.
24 hours ago, we were like in our own personal hell, like trying to figure out
First
how
world
this was going
problems.
to happen. But miraculous, there were so many delayed flights. There was tornado warnings in Atlanta airport. So the Atlanta airport connections, everything was delayed. So, but even though we got in from El Paso 5 hours late, there was
still one flight
super
to Florida.
delayed. There was two. There was a Fort Lauderdale flight at 1 a.m.
Yeah, true.
and a Jacksonville, Florida flight at 1:25 a.m. And we got in at around midnight, and the Jacksonville flight was perfect, and there were seats. So I was like, all right, going to Jacksonville. Sean drove.
Yeah, I had been up since 6 that morning because I didn't anticipate.
Yeah,
having
Sean was
to
awake
go
for
to Jacksonville.
a complete 24 hours. So we got home from Jacksonville at like 5 in the morning and took like just a real quick nap, like a 90-minute disco nap, because we wanted to be punctual for VelociCoaster.
And what was
after Hagrid?
What was the time slot?
10 a.m.
10 a.m.
Yeah,
10
10 a.m.
Okay.
We have been
10:30.
seeing lots of complaints that people had to wait forever for security and for temperature checks, and some people missing their time slots and not being allowed in.
And we had read that people were missing their time slots by like a few minutes and not being allowed in, and we were like, but then we had been reading people were getting let in multiple times, or that the staff were really lenient, and we were like, we don't want to take any chances.
Well,
like,
we even called Universal, which was a whole
was a
different
total
journey.
fiasco. If you're thinking about calling the guest services line for Universal, like my advice would be don't, and find some other way to, like, as a last resort, give them a call. But I almost feel like you're probably,
because for a minute we were trying to move our time slot to Wednesday or to later in the day today.
First they said that it wouldn't be necessary and that we could show up with our reservation and we could get in whenever we wanted. And I was like, that sounds kind of fishy. Like, can I get that in writing?
Yeah.
Basically, I was like, can I get that in an email so that I can show that to the team members when we get there on Wednesday? Because at this point in the game, we were thinking that Tuesday, our original reservation, was absolutely not going to happen. And he went to talk to his supervisor, and then he put me on a brief hold. And after he was all like crestfallen and sad, and he was like, actually, we can't do that. You have to, your time slot, your window, your day, like, you have to show up for that exact time slot. And I was like, okay. Like, I was sad but not surprised that that was not the case, what he told me originally. But I'm glad I double checked, because I was like, well, if we had showed up on Wednesday doing what you said, like, that we could just show up with any reservation, and they told us no, like, would have been really sad. But
yeah, Jacksonville delayed flight came through, and I hopped in the car a little bit before midnight, drove to Jacksonville, picked him up around like 2:40.
And you saw me land, too.
Yeah, well, yeah, because there was literally no one else around.
Me. Yeah, and it was like, there's your plane. Because there's no way that another plane would be landing. It was like literally landed at like 2:15 a.m.
Yeah, it was really early. And then we drove back to Orlando, and then slept a little bit, came to Universal early.
Got to Universal really early, like sat on a nice like table for like half an hour.
In Islands of Adventure. We were
right
like
in
the
front of the
first
coaster. Got on the first, I guess the second train of the day, because the first train of the day went out with like front row, back row only, and then we took back row on the second train out of the day, and yeah, from there it went really smoothly. The team members were so friendly, accommodating, excited.
So it was honestly like
jubilant.
kind of like a rewind of when we tried riding Hagrid's on opening day, because then our flight to Florida was delayed to like 2 or 3 in the morning, and so we showed up at Universal. Like, we showed up in Tampa and then drove straight to Universal.
Yeah, we got to Tampa at like midnight and then drove to Universal.
No, not at midnight. We didn't even leave till 1 a.m. out of Boston that night. Remember?
Oh yeah, we cut it very close.
Anyway, we have this thing where like we always
basically every time Universal opens a new ride and like we make plans to go, there's like a 5-hour flight delay for me for my work, and then we have to figure out a way to like keep the plans alive. So,
however, this
totally
time you didn't
it.
have to wait for 5 hours.
Yeah, this time, 7 hours.
7 hours for Hagrid.
For Hagrid.
Okay.
This time
it was literally like 7 minutes.
This ride we walked on. We were able to ride twice actually, because
we got front row, back row credits.
Because we were so early at the beginning on the front end of our time slot. We got off the ride. We were at the exit with our friends Sarah and Amber, who met up with us, colleagues of mine. We were like, our time slots aren't over for another 20 minutes. Like, what if we just played dumb and walked back around And if they say no, it'll be like, oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was like, unlimited rides for half an hour, not like one ride inside of the half-hour slot. So we walked up, and I'm like, we even talked to the exact same team member before, and he just played dumb.
I mean, it wasn't busy though.
Yeah,
like,
it wasn't. It was,
first time slot. I bet some people were getting there late because later it seemed a lot busier.
We and so he scanned all of our passes, and he's like, I saw nothing. And then we got to the entrance of the ride, and the team members were like, welcome back. And we're like, you've never seen us before. What are you talking about? This is our first ride.
And so,
obviously.
Did you get to choose your seats then?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, the front row had a really long line, about 20 minutes. So, like, when we tried riding in the front, they were like, oh, no, the line's too long. But then we kind of just
But then I was
wiggled
like,
away.
but then he was like, well, the back seat's the best seat. And we were like, we probably agree, because we rode the back seat first, and we walked right on. But we told the team member when he suggested we sit in the back, I was like, we already rode in the back. Can we please ride in the front? And he was like,
yeah, I didn't was like,
okay. Basically,
Super
the team
sweet.
members were like super, super accommodating on all fronts, and like so friendly and so excited. Like Universal knows exactly what they have with this ride. They're so proud of it,
they've got a weapon.
and they should be.
Yeah.
Because this is like a seismic event of a ride for this region.
Yeah, just for coaster enthusiasts, it's phenomenal, but also as like a complete package kind of
I
product.
can't remember
sort of thing.
the
Really
last time
nice.
the state of Florida opened a roller coaster that was so in tune with the interests of roller coaster junkies. I mean, that was probably like Busch Gardens in the 90s.
Yeah.
Doing stuff like that, or like Dueling Dragons. Like, it's been literally over 20 years since we got a roller coaster that was such a white knuckle, aggressive thrill ride that it doesn't feel like you ride a ride like Hagrid and you're like, oh my god, this is great and it's so fun and it's like perfect for families, kind of.
Yeah, because we totally called Hagrid the best coast in Florida.
Yeah,
we had a suspicion that it wasn't.
And we had but this is VelociCoaster is not a ride where you get off thinking like, oh, families will like that. Even though there definitely will be families who like it, they have to be a type of a certain breed of family to be like, oh yeah, that was fun. Because we saw people coming back in the station. Like I saw this mom and her son was probably like middle school age. Like, people come back into the station like cheering and clapping, and it's like an event every time a train parks. And they,
I mean, I'm clapping.
Yeah,
like
I mean, it was
sensational.
sensational. But
Like,
this mom riding with her kid, she came back and she was like literally crying because she was so scared. She was like wiping tears off her face, and her mask was like.
I mean, I don't blame her though. Like, as a coaster
as
enthusiast,
a roller coaster enthusiast, and we rode this, and we
there.
were like, oh my goodness! Like,
I literally screamed a couple times. And that's really unusual.
Our
for
first ride was truly terrifying.
But should we start at the entrance?
We'll start. Yeah.
Okay. What was your favorite part of the queue?
That's a really hard question because the queue is.
Let me start with one thing that we found out right after we left, is that the statues, when you enter the plaza for VelociCoaster, are actually paying homage to Dueling Dragons. So they're like
fire
facing
and
a
ice
certain
dragon
way.
that they're like,
and one has its tongue
at
out.
each other.
So the one with the tongue out is supposed to be like the ice dragon representation. The one that's looking up is supposed to be a dragon, like the fire one.
It's so cool.
So that's really cool that they kind of brought back.
Yeah, the creative director, his name escapes me.
Greg something,
but he,
I think?
the person in charge of the creative direction for the ride tweeted about that and how it was a direct homage to Dueling Dragons, which is I feel like VelociCoaster is the true spiritual successor to Dueling Dragons in the sense that it's the thrill coaster that replaced that attraction, whereas Hagrid was the literal replacement, just occupying the spot. But now it's like the natural order of roller coasters has been restored. For Islands of Adventure, we're back to 5.
Do you consider it a worthy replacement?
Yes. Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, Dueling Dragons was great, but it had terrible sight lines, and once they
also
stopped,
at the end of the day, having like a 6-train high thrill roller coaster in the back of the park, it just we could do a whole
podcast on why Dueling Dragons was an ill-fated attraction from the start. But the long short of it is having 2 virtually identical roller coasters with the same very niche appeal. Strictly thrill seekers, over 54 inches, kind of was
especially back when it opened, like late 90s. I mean, it was people weren't quite as used.
We
to
went in
rides
1999, and like the parks, Islands of Adventure struggled with attendance the first couple of years because of marketing issues, and like Dueling Dragons. I mean, they couldn't fill the trains on Dueling Dragons. that first summer. We were in peak. It was August 1999, and Dueling Dragons was sending out half-empty trains every dispatch because there just wasn't enough people to fill them.
But yeah, favorite part of the queue. There is a part of the queue where the train the second launch has windows alongside of it, and so the train launches by, and then there are projected raptors running after the train.
Yeah,
I saw a video.
and really clever.
You know what? I'm going to draw a little parallel here to Tron, and that's because aesthetically speaking, they did a lot of things that Tron kind of did when it comes to the lighting packages, the shaping, the use of LEDs, and then even like using the train launching past the window and then projecting on it.
Yeah,
that's what it did for
what
Tron.
does.
What Tron does that too.
The little pre-show sequence.
So, but very, very clever.
And I
very
guess the
smart.
colors a bit too, right? 'Cause it's also-
Yeah,
Absolutely.
totally. Yeah, like if you look at some
It's
of the
a black,
pictures, it looks
silver,
like
and light blue.
part of the entrance. Like, what's kind of unique about VelociCoaster's entrance is it's really large, and then the switchbacks are like technically outside, but they kind of make their way inside.
It's very
There's no
grand.
like
There's
certain
a gradual
entrance,
transition into the enclosed, but a majority of the queue, like the queue that we waited in, was almost entirely
Yeah, there's a lot of
indoor
indoor queuing, which is nice.
Lots of indoor queuing and climate-controlled spaces.
But yeah, there's a ceiling, and it looks a lot like kind of like the canopy for Tron, except for not necessarily the hexagons.
You could tell they did their homework. I'm pretty
They
confident
snooped around. They
Universal
knew what they
Creative
had to fight.
Sent
and
some people to Shanghai so that they could take their notes. It's brilliant, really, because now they've got this ride that a lot of aesthetic reasons expounds on the kind of thing that Disney was going for with Tron. And now when Disney World opens Tron, it's going to feel like maybe a more rudimentary version of what some of the effects
Tron will
were.
always have the benefit that it has that giant show building.
Yeah.
There's always darkness. There's definitely some things that I can really sense are designed for nighttime operations for VelociCoaster, and you really didn't get enjoying of it during the day. Like, I'll be honest. There's a couple things I saw when they were testing that you have no idea exist during the day because, it's light out. So at least that's the benefit Tron will have, is having an indoor section. But yeah, so that's definitely that's one of my favorite things in the queue, and I'm sure everyone's seen the picture by the time they listen to this.
Yeah, the other
But the
major
nuzzled
standout was
grooming stations for the
Yeah.
Velociraptors.
It's really quite genius because
Really impressive.
the animatronics are right in front of you. Like, you can reach out.
It's
and
honestly
touch
a
them.
really
They're
small
so
room. In
close.
pictures, I was expecting it to look larger, like stables kind of situation.
very intimate.
It's very small. They're like right there.
It's an intimate.
An intimate.
You walk through
Intimacy.
and there's two sets of two little holding areas for the raptors, and it's really quite smart because these are very detailed audio animatronics that you can like reach out and touch practically. They're right there. The fact that they're restrained limits their movement. If they wanted to have animatronics of velociraptors in the queue, it would be really hard to do that well.
Without it
If
looking...
if they were like in like a little pen or something like running, like there's just no easy way to do that. So this was a really clever choice.
Also, the Velociraptors on the ride, all four of them, are static.
They're
because
static.
you fly by on an Intamin coaster. Like there's no need for them to move. So I think they really wanted something that kind of like breathed life into it, literally. And so they're there like breathing, rolling their eyes, looking at you,
and facial
very
movements, and just like it reminds me fondly of like the Stormtrooper animatronics on Rise of the Resistance, where like the movements are very subtle, and it's enough to fool you into thinking that it's actors, because sometimes animatronics like sort of overact.
Yeah, it's always those hands and arms.
There's a lot
all,
of
like,
hand
flying
movement.
around.
I mean, Kylo Ren is
Always.
guilty of that. He is always speaking with his hands during Rise of the Resistance.
Or Shaka, whatever his name is.
Yeah,
the smuggler guy.
and Smuggler's Run. But yeah, the Raptor animatronics in the queue is so expertly executed, I think, because they really do feel realistic in a way that they didn't create so much challenge for themselves of creating a realistic dinosaur animatronic in a queue. They're like, okay, these guys are going to be restrained. Their movement is like limited to a few centimeters, basically, but it allows the details and stuff of the dinosaurs and their facial expressions and things to really come through. So that was a smart.
And another thing that's really
choice.
smart is the lockers.
Yeah, one of the best things about the queue is just how incredibly smart the infrastructure is.
The lockers are built into the queue, but they're two-way. So, like, you put your stuff in a locker with your... Everything has to go in there. You can only have, like, your park ticket or pass on you. And then when you exit the ride, you're on the other side of the lockers, and you just open them from the other side. There's no like blending of the crowds anymore, which has always been a problem at Universal.
Like Arthur
It's really
in, Europa
incredible.
Park.
They do that too. That's cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it's
that
sort
was
of like,
really
like
refreshing
Baron
for
does,
Universal.
And
I've
Baron
been
too,
rides
yeah.
with that
Yeah,
have, like
I like Baron's
valet,
system a lot.
you know, locker cubby type things. This is the first time we've seen anything like this in the United States. It's just a really, you go in, you go through most of the queue, and then you get to the locker setup. And then after the lockers, you go through the metal detectors. Everything is so seamlessly integrated.
And then you go upstairs.
Then you go upstairs
and then there
to
is where
loading.
most of the storytelling happens,
Yeah.
which we'll get to in a little bit. But
Yeah.
I think that... Anyway, so when you get
Before-
upstairs, there's a lot of storytelling.
Jump to that, like, I wanted just to know how much of the queue is actually themed then? Is it like...
All of it. Like,
Okay.
all of it that we saw. There's outdoor overflow
There's a
queue
lot of outdoor
that's
queue that we didn't
really
touch.
nicely landscaped and situated under and around the ride. So you, in a roundabout way, that's themed too. The theme of the roller coaster is that it's a roller coaster themed to a roller coaster. They didn't concern themselves too dramatically with like, you're a raptor. This is recreating a sequence. It's like the theme is that you're at Jurassic World. You're at the amusement park.
And people want more and more and more.
This is a
so
roller coaster
they
experience.
designed a roller coaster that runs
built
with
to
raptors.
bring you closer
Okay.
to the animal exhibit. It sort of echoes the theme of Flying Dinosaur at Universal Studios Japan, where the theme of the roller coaster is that it's a roller coaster themed
to like recreating
to
flight.
a dinosaur.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a roller coaster that knows it's a roller coaster. The fact that it's a roller coaster is canon. Unlike a ride like Hagrid, where it's technically a roller coaster, but thematically, you're on a motorcycle.
Yeah.
This is a roller coaster that knows it's a roller coaster. So they kind of it's a nice way for them to allow themselves to build something like this, because it's the more roller coastery your roller coaster is, the harder it is to tell a story where the roller coaster is playing a part that isn't a roller coaster. Does that make sense?
Kinda.
Because like when you're at Expedition Everest, it's like you're on a mine train. Matterhorn bobsleds, you're on a bobsled run. Like everything in a lot of these parks is about creating a story around a roller coaster type ride. Whereas VelociCoaster is like, this is a roller coaster that knows it's a roller coaster.
Yeah.
You look at it and you can say like, that's a roller coaster.
I want to add one more thing about the queue, though, because we didn't get to see all of the queue because, it was previews, but most of the waterfront is completely outlined with queue. So people that are, when it opens, people are going to be waiting alongside the final barrel roll and below the top hat, and then eventually make their way into the covered part. And then you have all those sequences that we talked about earlier, like... inside.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of indoor queuing, which is
queue.
nice.
Yeah, there's
because,
right when you
weather.
walk into the first part of the queue that's covered has a fun little pre-show sequence, the big statue with the Velociraptors and roller coaster track in there, and then you move through to the hallway that has the launch sequence with the projected glass screens, and then you continue
to like a storage room with lockers with Easter eggs from Jurassic Park and Jurassic World franchise. Then you go into the stables.
Admittedly,
then you go to the
I've never
lockers.
seen the Jurassic World movies. I saw the very first Jurassic
I
Park.
like Jurassic World.
Somebody more versed in the Jurassic World franchise would be able to tell you a lot more than I can about the significance of some of the Easter eggs in the queue. But as far as I can tell, it's just a really immersive, thoughtful queue that's very stylish, polished, and has a lot of interesting things going on leading up to the coaster. Excuse me.
And I guess we can also talk about the station itself. So you have those switchbacks upstairs where there's a giant screen where Claire and Owen, which are characters from Jurassic World, talk about that's like the new experience for Jurassic World to bring you closer to you're going to race the raptors. Then there's obviously all the stuff that could possibly go wrong because is there a Universal ride without it going possibly wrong?
Yeah.
And then
Universal's always putting you to work, man. Like you're on vacation, and then like Optimus Prime is like, you need to save the world, man. Like I know this isn't what you signed up for, but
we need your bravery.
Hey.
Okay. Thanks, fruits. And then you move into the station, and the station is really sleek and
Really
modern.
nice.
Giant glass window that
floor to
faces
ceiling
the
glass
paddock.
panes that face.
So you see the coaster
first half of
running
the ride.
through the paddock with the dinosaurs.
Okay.
From the station. So that's pretty much, and then you're bored. And then there's really cool little screens that are next to the air gates.
Yeah.
That like tell you how to board, how to not stick
It's
out
like a
your
very
hand.
brief,
Like it's a very nice little. pre-boarding statement.
pre-boarding spiel about sit down.
So instead of like having your spiel run, it's just like on little screens.
Yeah,
so like when you wait to board, you have like a 10-minute, like 10-second
there's
cycle.
There's no announcements or anything. There's no like recorded spiel about any. It's just
really refreshing.
Yeah.
Because usually it gets like so blaring, like hearing the spiel.
They had a larger set of switchbacks upstairs right before loading, where I think you'd get if this wasn't technical rehearsal. I would assume that those switchbacks would be full, and that you get a little bit more time.
That's why they tell the story
with
like,
the pre-show with Claire and Owen.
You don't really get the story till you're upstairs.
As lucky as we were to ride twice, I feel like our time in the queue was still very swift and not enough.
And they're only running 2 trains.
So
they're gonna go to 4 when it opens. They're only running 2 right now.
People will be moving through the queue at a real clip because we were moving quick, and the ride was only running at half capacity. Half theoretical capacity. So you get to the trains come in. It's neat seeing the trains come in from the final breaks because the light package is so spectacular, even in the daytime.
Yeah, it comes to like a dark tunnel on the way back to the station, so you can kind of
you really get to appreciate the lighting package right from the inside of the ride any time of day. Then people come in, cheering, screaming, in tears. Some people were like frozen in fear, like horrified. I think some people just really like Jurassic Park. They really like Universal.
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying. I think that dinosaurs are a hot ticket, and like every age group likes dinosaurs nowadays.
The height requirement's only 51 inches.
I think people get fooled into believing it's a pretty gentle ride, but it's definitely not a gentle ride.
Even looking at it, people are like, "Oh, this looks scary," and it's actually scarier than it looks. Like,
yeah, I was really impressed because Sven was there when we rode Talon and our first impressions. I mean, it's definitely a different beast.
Well, that's a question that was coming, but I guess we can talk about it now.
Let's do it.
Taron or VelociCoaster?
VelociCoaster. Sorry, not even a shadow of a doubt.
Quick list of reasons. VelociCoaster has a bunch of different elements. Like, nothing feels like it's doing the same thing twice. Like, every single element feels very different.
Yeah.
The near misses, I think, are a lot tighter on VelociCoaster. I was impressed by how incredibly tight the clearances were.
The second half of the ride is exactly as good as we expected. It absolutely met or it exceeded expectations. The first half of the ride was exceptionally better than we assumed.
Really good.
Much
full of air,
faster and more forceful.
Amazing theming
than what we were led to believe based on like our own test footage that we made of the ride, kind of meandering its way through at the empty trains. The first half of the ride is ferocious in ways that we didn't expect, and beautifully landscaped. The rock work is awesome. You feel like you're going to get scalped or impaled by the rock work, and I think that's a great quality.
Yeah, they have a lot of spiky rocks, which I guess,
makes sense.
But they're always placed a certain direction so you can ride at the spikes.
Yeah, especially Sean. Okay, I was sitting next to him because he's so tall. I'm like, babe, you're gonna come back without a scalp if we're not careful.
Yeah, because we rode in the back first, and the first inversion is an Immelman, and you get like whipped off of that.
Yeah.
But you're facing those rocks that are like it looks like you're about to get impaled in your head.
And is there a height restriction?
There is not currently a height ceiling yet.
Yeah, there have been rumors that there may possibly be a height limit, but as of right now,
I will say that the rate of acceleration of the launches aren't so dramatic. It's not like people are going to be snapping their necks.
They're kind of like Talon, I feel, but that's doable.
And the first launch is very satisfying. The show sequence is fine. The actual like thematic sequences on the ride are maybe a little more mild and straightforward. Like the queue gave us so much more than I expected, and the ride doesn't concern itself with as much as the queue does.
And I think the main reason is like they'd rather tell a story while you're standing than while you're running through that coaster at a high speed, because there isn't much time to take it in.
You can only do so much
quick,
once you're on the ride, because I think a lot of people are terrified, and the time for telling stories is over once you're like sitting in the launch sequence, like waiting to take off, and there's people who are genuinely concerned about how this is going to go for them. So you've got the raptor paddocks on either side, like the little corrals on either side.
Yeah, they're little,
and they're getting ready, and then like there's they do warn you with the launch. There's a very growing, like swelling crescendo of
red lightning of
lights and sounds.
Well, it's smart because the screens are on the side, but all the raptors take off first. So all the raptors are gone, so you're kind of forced to put your head forward, and then they launch. So there's definitely like a 2-3 second delay between the raptors leaving. You know, it screens.
Yeah, because it's true. They have stuff to look at left and right, but they don't want people to really be looking left or right when it takes off. And that's like an issue with...
Just to be sure, is it like the same system of Taron where you first leave the station, you go to a launch section, you stop, and then you
park,
launch?
Yeah.
Yes.
You actually go backwards a little bit.
Do you?
Yeah. You pull back almost like a flywheel catch car, except there's no such mechanism. But you do. You dispatch into a sheet metal themed like tunnel of sorts that's also echoed in the final breaks. There's smoke and mist.
The mist is really meant to kind of obscure the screens. Because the screens are really close to you. I personally could see the tops of the screens really easily. Alex, not as much. So that's one of the conversations we had on the way home.
It wasn't as obvious to me right away that the raptors on either side of us were screens. I first thought they were practical effects, but very well obscured by lighting the bars on the cages of sorts and the steam. Your mileage may vary. I don't have the best eyesight. I was wearing my contact lenses, which is always a special event for me.
We rode in the morning, so the light was really bright, like shining into the tunnel. I'm sure that like on different times of days you can't really see that, but like the light was really coming in, so you can kind of notice there were screens there, I guess. But
so you park and then you go backward a little bit, like I want to say like a third of a car length almost. Really? Yeah. I can't believe
where was I?
Maybe
just literally like we barely even stopped before we went backward,
right?
And then we took off after the full sequence. It was a nice little touch.
Launch is good though, I will say.
The launch is satisfying. The whole first half of the ride is really quite aggressive. Lots of airtime, positive G's. The inversions are really strong.
They fit a lot in a little space. Very spaghetti-bolly.
How many inversions does it have?
It has four. Start with the Immelman, and then you dive into a major pointy rock structure sequence, and then immediately into a dive loop that has a bit of a twist in it.
And then you have a really sharp...
It's a dive loop with like a quarter turn in it, and then everything after the dive loop is a little bit of a blur compared to the rest of the ride, where every sequence feels very specific, but it's also the hardest part of the ride to see.
Well, yeah, I could go through every element if you wanted to. So
what happens after the dive loop?
So you have the dive loop, and then you have a quick, like, sharp turn, like overbank turn.
Yeah.
That turns
like a very
shallow
hill. There was a great airtime hill over like the waterfall.
Then you cross through the rock work, and you have your first encounter with two dinosaurs, which is kind of like a switch track down.
Yeah, like a little.
Then
like
you
a little
come around
S.
again. But like, another sharp turn, and then you dive even lower. That's I would say that's the lowest part of the paddock. And then you have two more dinosaurs. Then you come up through the rock work, and you make your S-way down to the second launch.
Yeah, okay.
And then from
that's
there
the part of the ride that feels the most
straightforward.
Taron-like, because it's all about swift changes in direction, airtime, and the scenery, and kind of taking in.
The biggest surprise was airtime, because I wasn't expecting airtime.
Airtime in the front half, definitely.
That first half. I really wasn't expecting any air, and there was a lot of it.
Frankly, we couldn't tell you story-wise what happens going into the second launch.
We don't understand what happens.
Because we launch into the paddock, and like that's part of what is advertised. And we're not sure if the second half of the ride is
just
necessarily
Jurassic World
going according to plan, or
guess.
if it's like to represent a sequence where a raptor escapes.
Because the problem is, like, in the queue, you see the raptors chasing the train. But there's not really any explanation on the ride when you leave the paddock, why you're leaving the paddock.
Yeah.
And when you come back to the station, for example, like the brake runs, which is a really lengthy brake run section, there's no, like, raptors that have made it back. Like, did they escape? Are they, like, running around?
The ride does not have any onboard audio, but the offboard audio at the very beginning and the very end attempt to tie things together. Although even though the ride has a story, it doesn't have like a beginning, middle, and end. It's not like a sequence per se. In the final breaks, Claire says something about raptors having escaped, or that there's a situation
next to River Adventure, which I think references to Raptor Encounter.
Yeah.
Because Raptor Encounter is Jurassic World themed, and it's next to River Adventure, so I think that's what she's referring to.
That's another one that I think.
Maybe that's what the Raptor ran.
Yeah.
To Raptor Encounter.
So maybe the second half of the ride represents the raptors escaping, and now they're like terrorizing people in the park, which ties in with Raptor Encounter
and every Jurassic movie.
So. Although Claire speaks very nonchalantly about it. So if that's the situation and there's raptors literally running around like eating people and stuff.
But that's, I think, the whole shtick is that Claire is always like, this is what we did for you.
Claire's,
Even though the world's burning and Owen's like, the world's burning.
Claire's like,
you know?
Yeah, she's like, it's actually fine.
She's like, we made this roller coaster for you. And he's like, why do we do this?
Owen is like, this is messed up. It's like, this is a mess.
And so, like, do you feel that when you talk about the ride and the layout, it feels like it is a very mixed experience of airtime and versions, system slowing down. But
it does it all, and it does a lot.
And is there still one thing that you'd consider that is a bit more, like it is a little bit more airtime centered or a little bit more inversion centered?
Now, that's
I would
what's
say
so great is
the
that I find the
airtime
balance.
The airtime really
solid.
does feel like it takes center stage for me. Considering the park has 4 inversions, it shares. The ride has 4 inversions. It shares a park with Incredible Hulk, which is 7 inversions and no airtime.
Yeah,
Hagrid is not really an airtime ride. Really, the only other coaster in the park that has airtime is like the Mummy, Rip Red Rocket, in the resort.
There is more air, I will say that. But I will say that, I mean, most Intamins, especially, they're kind of air centric. So I think if we're gonna talk on a scale of like this manufacturer, what they've done, this may be one of their best balanced products. Because I feel like every single moment on the ride is not repeated again. And whether it's an inversion or it's an airtime moment or it's like a very strong positive G turn, because there's a couple turns there that like they'll slam you back into your seat.
Some forces.
And so I think that's kind of where I'm at, is that the balance is so solid. Like even the turnaround around the bridge, where you go into the full loop.
The double helix.
Every element is so different, even though it kind of looks like it should all kind of run together. Nothing feels alike.
Even your second lap around that double helix feels different the second time around. Not a moment of this ride feels wasted on doing something that was done better prior on the ride already.
I want to give a shout out to the little switch track part, which always kind of looked kind of whatever to me. That was a big surprise.
Yeah, the part it's parallel to the stall. The stall is a huge focal point for this ride. It's an enjoyable moment, but you go through it very fast. It's not so much a highlight as
like it's a really long stall, but you go through it so incredibly fast.
I guess I would say that
really
the highlights on this ride are not just the airtime moments you expect, but the ones that really are a surprise, like that elevated S-looking thing that is next to the
I call it like a little switch track where like you just move up and over.
Or like the airtime coming off of the Immelman.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, how high would you rate the intensity?
I would rate
intensity probably 9.
I would rate it quite high.
Oh wow!
It's seriously very intense.
It's not X2. It's not going to.
There's always rides that
it's not going to make you fear for your bodily health necessarily. Although, according to if you ask some of the people who rode it, I haven't seen people look quite
There's
so
some interesting
terrified
transitions though, because I find the transition in and out of the stall to be quite intense. Like you really swing into the stall.
The barrel roll at the end, I think, is a really fitting finale. There is a lot of airtime that you enjoy while suspended over the water.
Oh, wow.
It is a really ferocious moment of
it's
out
a really
of your seat
wide
time.
element, so you really move from side to side quite a bit on that.
It kind of like how some rides like I-305, when Intamin does the 80-degree banking, switch to another 80-degree banking on the opposite side, and you catch that airtime in the process. This does the same thing, except you're upside down. That was the scariest part of the ride for me. Coming into it on our first ride in the back seat, it was so violent. It was enough to make you feel like
it was a really
had this this out of body moment.
Nice.
Where if there was any part of the ride that was going to eject you, it was this part.
We just say, but what we say intensity out of 10?
I'd give it at least a 9. Yeah. And by the standards of the Central Florida crowd, this is going to be.
I would say when it comes to intensity levels, it is kind of up there, maybe a little bit below Skyrush and I-305,
Yeah.
because those are just insane.
Skyrush and I-305 are verging on painful.
Dueling
VelociCoaster
Dragons
is very
kind of had the
comfortable.
same snappiness, but I would still say this is more intense than Dueling Dragons.
This goes right. This is like Maverick level, I think.
Yeah.
I prefer this over Maverick for various reasons. That my personal being just the trains. The restraints are so comfortable. It is such a. I will continue to say that Intamin has like the best trains.
Restraints are interesting
in the market.
though, because they are not like exact copies of like
They're-
and stuff.
yeah,
they're
they're a
very
slightly
similar,
different
but
version.
the handlebars are like the old.
Very low profile, like
Intamin
drawer
ones.
pole looking handlebars that
So
are
it's
black.
not like the metal pieces that stick out you can hold on to. It is like you have to hold on to these little U-shaped.
They
things
made some
that are on
interesting
top of the
stylistic
bar.
choices. But yeah, I would put it up there, and I would say that it's more intense than Tauron,
Okay.
Oh, by far.
and right up there with a ride like Maverick.
So
Unrelenting, but still comfortable.
I guess we'll get some new I almost died reviews on Google now. For
Yeah.
this
Oh
ride.
yeah.
Oh,
I can't
yes.
wait to read the review. Yeah, we'll need to do a whole nother episode of
almost flew
good
out.
rides, bad reviews.
I've already seen many posts about that.
Because
on
yeah, the
pages.
pass holder pages are cracking me up. A lot of people are like, "All right, well, so we didn't die, but I still felt like we were going to die," and so like that was a lot for me to process as a
Came out
person
of a
on
seat so
vacation.
much.
The ride is extremely accommodating, so I think for people who were worried that they wouldn't be accommodated by the ride, might be having more of these moments where they feel like they would slip out, or people who are really really skinny, who are like, I don't know if this is enough to keep me in the ride. Like there's a myriad of things that people are saying and concluding and thinking based on their ride experiences now, because the seating configuration and the restraint system is such a low profile, especially when you compare it like to a ride like Hulk, where people were horrified. Certain people were at the fact that it was a looping coaster that did this, and it didn't have the shoulder harness, because seasoned Universal pass holder people will associate looping roller coasters with having a shoulder harness, and then this one does not. And people are like, "Well, how's that safe? Like, how's that?"
You know how the general public
You know
can
how
be
people-
sometimes.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, like Lepor.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, Lepor.
Yeah. And it's like, you'll be fine. I mean, Rip Ride Rocket doesn't go upside down, but it comes pretty close. And that's a lap bar ride that I feel like is routinely trying to buck you off. So it shouldn't be too surprising for some people who are more astute on the horizon of roller coasters, but for some people it was really alarming. Some people I don't think even realized until they got to the station that there was like the lap bar comes from over top, but your feet aren't on. Not having your feet on the floor was another thing that was hard for some people.
Because I don't have that.
There were
Must be nice.
Sean's
Can't relate.
feet are always on the floor, even on like twisted impulse coasters where you just fly right through the station and risk getting your ankles ripped off.
Oh wow.
Maximum height 6'2". Sean's like, I got you.
But there's people who were posting, and they're like, I couldn't none of me was touching the ride except for the lap bar and my lap. I wasn't in the seat. My feet weren't on the floor the whole ride. Like it's
Well, isn't
really
that
being
what you're looking
ragdolled.
for?
Yeah, well, some people, it's just a lot for them to process.
Yeah. And
Even people, oh no, go ahead.
how different would you rate the front seat experience from the back seat experience?
yes, I
I'm
was
so
waiting
glad
for
you
this
asked
moment.
us this question, Sven.
So,
I'm ready.
overall, backseat.
Backseat.
Best seat.
I will not soon forget our ride on the backseat, because that was the first ride. And
And that's because we had already heard that the back was pretty lit.
it was so
we're like,
hair
okay, we'll
raising.
take the back.
It was really the second half of the ride. We haven't talked as much about the second half of the ride, but I think most people were talking about it. Really, the top hat shines whether you're in the front or the back
Yeah, and in the front you get like a really nice pop over the top hat.
before it slows
But
down.
then you really just kind of slow down
the
and make your
views
way
are
down.
fabulous.
But on the back seat, you
the
get whipped
sustained
over that
airtime in the
top
back
hat.
seat over the top hat is fabulous. The stall is a front seat element for me personally.
too.
But then in the back seat, the rest of the second half of the ride really shines
Pretty
as
much
far as the
every
airtime
single
moments.
element, yeah.
The barrel roll is just so fiery. It's a spicy barrel roll. It just both times I wasn't prepared
Coming
for
to a
it.
sushi place near you.
Spicy barrel roll. Like, I don't know. When we rode Steam Racer at Wuchi Sunak, which is Sean's only Blue Fire clone. Our favorite part of the ride was the little barrel roll at the end, or the Blue Fire roll.
Imagine that.
I really like that one, too.
This is the Blue Fire roll on steroids. It felt like...
Okay, I have this awful tendency to go through all the major elements and say if it's better in the front or back, so we're going to do that.
Okay, that's fine.
So the first inversion, which is the Immelman.
The Immelman is a backseat
ride, because you really got whipped over it towards the rocks.
And you're really charging those pointy rocks that will stab you. You're really taking those on at a high speed if you're in the back of the train.
And then the dive loop is best in the front. Because the way it's shaped is like way wild. Yeah. And so like in the front, you really get thrown all the way around. You've got a lot of speed
going into it.
I was really amazed. Like I was not in my seat
the
entire time
vehicle trains on this ride
they're long for
why the front and back seat ride experiences are so different. And
they're long trains for like how close it is, like it's the same tightness as Taron, I would say, in the first half.
It is an incredibly snug sequencing for...
And then when it comes to the quick turns, they're usually better in the front, but anytime you go past Raptors, I think it's better in the back because the audio effects are kind of happening like sometimes after the front train already passes the dinosaur.
I find that that's often the case with story coasters, like we were talking, like Hagrid and stuff, where
you can really miss some stuff when you're in the back.
Like when you're in the back, when you're in the very front, you kind of get the very front end of a sequence if there's audio involved. Usually the audio is playing out while the sequence is already behind you. VelociCoaster is no different, although it's not as integral. I mean, a ride like Hagrid has like whole dialogue and stuff that you're following along with as you're riding.
But it's also being spoken to you at the same time.
For the paddock sequence when you're focusing on the scenes and stuff, the scenery, the effect, like the dragons, the dinosaurs are better appreciated in the back. But I feel like the landscaping might be something that you can appreciate more in the front seat when your view is unobscured.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, this ride.
And I would say the airtime moments, it doesn't matter.
Front it's
and back
a win-win.
are both really good. Either you have that like pop over the hills, or like you have really being dragged over it. Like
you'll either get really ferocious airtime as your train leads into these airtime hills before it starts to
or on the way
slow down, or that whip cracking sensation. In the back seat. So for airtime wise, you can't lose. It's just that where you feel your airtime is going to vary based on where you're seating. It very well could feel like different in the middle, or some combination of the two to sit in the middle seats. We'll have to wait and see. We'll find out eventually. It was a miracle that we got to ride in the front and the back, though.
I would still say the top hat, even though the front's really fun, there's like one quick moment where you pop. I would say that the back seat is better than the top hat because you have that entire drop.
Yeah, you get the whole drop's worth of airtime.
Stall is better in the front because you see the stall. Because the stall, like I said, it's so fast, you don't really feel it. You know, it's like riding Enterprise. Like you're just being, positive G's to the max.
Yeah.
So, the only way to really appreciate it is to look at it and like seeing that you're upside down, which is the front row. And then you have that wave turn, which is really cool.
Yeah, the wave,
full of air. I would say
the wave turn is back.
Because you again whipped over it. Sometimes the whipping is just
the
too
suspended
intense.
like S-turny thing that's parallel to the stall
back for
is also a backseat moment, and then the reprise of the wave turn. The ride's just full of airtime everywhere. It's hard to keep up. It's
and though the roll is cool in the front from a viewpoint, I would say I like the better in the back.
It's ferocious in the back. It really ragdolls you through that. And then the approach into the brake run even is a great moment
with lots of air. That's probably the best in the front, I'll admit.
Yeah.
So a good balance. Like there's no going wrong between front or back. I just think overall the back has a little more kick to it.
Back's a little scarier. The front's a little more interesting from a visual standpoint.
But definitely, this is not one of those coasters where like you have to queue for the front to have the best time. Because I don't necessarily believe that's the case.
Yeah, especially like we waited a half hour extra, I think, to ride in the front, and just because we'd already ridden, we were fortunate enough to get the backseat ride first. Yeah. So we're like, well, we were literally telling Sarah and Amber, we were like, well, we need to wait for the front because we're going to record a podcast about this later, and we want to be able to compare because we know Sven's going to ask us if it's a front seat ride or a back seat ride, and we're going to do like a whole 5-minute dissertation on that.
Well,
here we are.
I can't guarantee that for Conda though, because it will be. I've posted it on ECK like a teaser story of where we're going, and then the people that I saw that also said, "Oh yeah, we're going too," and other pages where I've seen. I mean, so many fans are going, and I think it's going to be fun to see everyone again because it's like first day of the season for Belgium on Saturday. But before we go to Conda, I still have questions about VelociCoaster. Is there...
I would say for your Conda experience, nothing shall be impossible, because the last thing we expected was to be able to request the front seat on VelociCoaster, or the back seat for that matter, and they accommodated both of our requests. So fingers crossed.
Well, we'll see. But is there... So obviously when you leave the ride, you need to collect back your bags. Is there any other post-scene on the ride?
There's not really...
Well,
any...
when you disembark, that's when you get to the window that faces the paddock. Yeah. So when you leave, you see other coaster trains running.
You see...
And then you exit down the stairs to the lockers, and then you just exit back out into the main...
The Discovery Center is now has had new life breathed into it as the exit, shop, and debriefing sequence for VelociCoaster. You get funneled into the shop, and then you take the staircase back up to the ground level for the upper. I mean, it really is amazing topographically how this ride is all set up, because like you go down a whole story.
To the waterfront.
To enter the ride. You climb a flight of stairs only to dispatch out of the station, and you're at ground level with the midway that passes along River Adventure.
Yeah. There's a lot of high differentiation in that area.
This is like Florida's first true terrain coaster. Isn't that funny? Like,
I guess I kind of always considered Kumba one.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, Florida coasters have always had to bring their own terrain. BYOT, bring your own terrain.
Bring your own terrain.
Disney's like, we don't have any mountains to work with, so we're going to build our own and thread a coaster through it.
Space Mountain.
I just think it's neat how VelociCoaster, like the midways, the split level of midway segments.
Well, I think the greatest part of it is that everyone on the midway gets to enjoy the ride off-ride. It's such a pretty ride off-ride. It's just themed to be looked at. The whole thing is like meant to be like a viewing thing.
Yeah. It's ready for Instagram.
Again, very Tron.
The static dinosaurs at first, I thought, well, is it weird that none of the dinosaurs are moving? Not when you take pictures of them.
Also, for a second, I mean, yes, it would have been fun if they did something because they're very static. Like, I'm not going to lie. There's enough time to look at them that you're like, oh, these are really effing static. They're just standing there. But at the same time, like,
they're also
you
outside.
Go so fast, so you kind of forget about it.
Look, if you want, like,
moving dinosaurs,
high-profile audio animatronics outside on a roller coaster, there's literally one right next door.
Yeah.
Hagrid. So
I guess the question is, do you rate it higher than Tron?
Well, okay, so we talked about this too, of course.
Tron will always be our personal favorite.
So we have for all my questions.
You have two pillars. You have the personal, sentimental favorite pillar, and you have the objectively better
best
pillar.
Yeah.
And yes, objectively,
this ride
VelociCoaster beats the piss out of a lot of rides.
Objectively, I find it hard to find anything about this ride that I would change. I mean,
I would like the story to be a little more explained.
The story,
that's just me.
But also the ride's in technical rehearsal. I like to think that by the time things are open and like a few rides on it, maybe if they're using the upstairs queue with the Claire and Owen pre-show sequence up there, like piecing together the story, of what story there is. It really doesn't concern itself too much with like an arc. It's more of an environment, like a mood that you're submerging yourself in. But like ride wise, like from dispatch to disembark, like I really struggle to find something that I would change, which that's always like my judge of a ride is like, how well does it fulfill its expectations? How well does it live up to its potential?
I'm not going to lie. I had really high expectations, and I was blown out of the water. And I almost was afraid to record this because I didn't want to sound like a fanboy.
I don't want to be a woo girl, you know? We're like, oh my God, it's the best roller coaster ever.
It's like legit really, really good, though. Like, it's a really good ride.
It was hard I feel like we were in shock, like, especially after our second ride. I was like, wow, like we really...
I think after my first ride, I was like, wow, like they actually did it.
Yeah.
Like, they actually pulled this shit off. Like,
they did the damn thing.
Because they could have gotten away with it being like more family friendly.
They could have built us a Copperhead Strike type family
and I would have
launch
expected
looper,
that.
and it would have been the thing where we came off the ride and we're like, wow, what a perfect fit! Like this is great for families, blah blah blah. We came off of this thing thinking like, wow, this is going to traumatize some
coaster.
people.
No, it really is.
Is it the best coaster in the U.S. for you guys?
It's the best coaster in Florida.
In the
handily.
U.S.? We always do this.
I know.
What's the episode? We time our
that one we have to think about a little bit more. We were asking ourselves, I mean, Kumba's
it's hard.
Between Kumba and like Mako and
because there's also
Hagrid, it was like, how is this ride going to stack up? And frankly, we would be remiss.
In Florida, I think it's like no doubt.
Yeah,
best
we
goes in Florida.
remiss to say
but
that.
But in the U.S., there's a couple other ones that kind of like I will say it's probably top 5 because I think I-305, Fury 325, X2,
Lightning Rod,
maybe Lightning Rod,
Outlaw Run, maybe like there's definitely some.
There's a couple good ones.
That
personal taste wise, it is I think in the top 5 in the U.S.
Absolutely in the top 5.
Because I like my rides pretty ferocious. I'm really a big fan of I-305.
And there's definitely, we talked about a lot of the Intamins in the country. I think it might be the best Intamin.
I would say it's the best
in the country.
Yes.
I will if not the world. I'm trying to think of all my Intamins now. They've got a lot. It's hard for me to gather them all in like one space in my mind.
I'm pretty confident Furious Baco is better though.
Maybe the launch.
Oh my god!
I'm kidding.
Just putting your head in a blender, right?
Yeah, but turning into
but
wine.
like, yeah, Sean, what I love about this ride is it takes it all the way to the very highest threshold of intensity, right below the part where it starts to hurt. And there's rides like Sky Rush that feel really taxing on your body.
Or
I-305, even X2. I know a lot of people who just don't feel like taking that kind of abuse more than like once a visit. So VelociCoaster has intensity that just hits that threshold right before you start thinking about bodily harm.
9 is fine.
And if you're gonna feel this in the next day, like, oh, am I gonna hurt tomorrow because of this roller coaster? So that's that. I think that was best case scenario, and for that reason, I feel that it's my favorite Intamin that I've been on that I know of, unless I'm.
We're giving such complicated answers.
I
just realized Sven's like, is this the best in the U.S.? And we're listen.
I'm already scared for the podcast next week because my replies will be a little less.
But yeah, I would take it over Maverick. I would take it over Sky Rush. I would take it over I-305.
I would take it over any Intamin.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's like legit so good.
Unless I'm like overlooking something obvious, but I just really don't think so.
No, because they went with length. Because my thing is always length. Like it's always length. If a ride's not lengthy,
highly substantial,
ride. But like it's really long. It's like
people are going to be waiting in line for this for hours and are still going to feel satisfied.
It's pretty niche, so I have a suspicion that it's going to be putting people through pretty quick.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But overall, I'd give it a 10, and it's greater than the sum of its parts, and the parts are pretty spectacular. So, this is a runaway success for Universal. I can't believe they did this. And I knew that they were capable. I just didn't think they necessarily would have the audacity, but they did, and here we are. And I think people are really liking it. So. I'm curious to see how reviews pile up over the next few months.
And how
see if we don't have another review podcast. Yeah, and how it ages.
Because at the end of the day, it is Intamin. And Intamins just don't age well, I feel like any of them.
Yeah.
Well, so far, Taron isn't doing that bad, but it's only
because it's kind of slow. No kidding. No, I'm messing.
Because Taron doesn't operate 365.
No, we did realize, because I was talking about, like, wow, when we rode Taron, like, in the morning, it was slow.
It had to warm up.
But then we realized, but the steel is always like burning hot in Florida.
We got up.
Stupid hot
we walked out the door this morning. It was hot as shit. At 8 a.m. I was like, okay.
So like, of course, VelociCoaster doesn't have to warm up because it's already warmed up, like always. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll see articles coming from the ride. Not only maybe a review, but also in the new rankings for 2021. And after doing some other rides, you'll see, after doing some night rides, you'll see where eventually you'll place it in your personal rankings.
We're gonna wait a few weeks, or maybe a couple at least a week with bringing out any sort of report, because so many people have already gone and done the
we
whole,
didn't even bring our
cute
camera for
pictures
this.
and
We
stuff.
just figured that we
were tired.
We were
so
tired.
what we're going to do is, this is like, we're going to have this podcast episode,
is
and then
our
we're going to
niche.
weave in VelociCoaster in like a different direction, like comparing it to other coasters. I don't really want to do the whole like queue walkthrough thing.
Yeah.
So you're not going to see that from us, because everyone's done it.
Everyone's doing it.
But we're definitely gonna be speaking of VelociCoaster for weeks to come. That's for sure.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Well,
Absolutely.
next week, another Intamin coming up. Conda.
I can't wait.
I'm super excited.
I think Conda is the best looking roller coaster.
You know what I would hope would open this year? I hope Pantheon opens this year. Maybe we can do like a third episode. We can fly out and ride Pantheon. That'd be kinda
Pantheon
cool.
versus VelociCoaster.
But like, I have no trust in
Yeah,
Steel
I'm
Parks
interested in that
right now, so I
one
don't
too,
know.
because it's coming to Parkastics as well. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's gonna be so great.
It's the age of
my
Intamin, always.
goodness. Yeah.
It's always the age
Intamin
of
never
Intamin.
dies.
it's like COVID is over. Here's Intamin.
COVID
it's
is
the
over.
cure.
Intamin. Yep.
Exactly.
Intamin cures COVID. 2021.
I'll gladly inject some Intamin in my arm.
Intamin vaccines.
It's a weird flex.
Yeah,
All right.
That's all right. We're tired. I think we need another nap.
Awesome.
With that being said, you can probably figure where we're headed after
Yeah.
every episode.
We're going to Disney World.
We're going to
probably,
Disney World for a couple
to
hours.
Continue to decompress.
Get some steps in. You know, it's our whole thing now. It's like, get our steps. It's more fun at Disney.
Gotta exercise.
So, all right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you, Sven, for
thank you for interviewing
indulging us and asking us all the questions. And we look forward to doing it in return soon after Conda. And for everyone listening at home, welcome back to second part of season 3. Hoping to not let you guys leave you guys on red for for the next couple of weeks. So thank you guys for listening, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.